Hallelujah. 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 Shabbat Shalom Lakim. Shabbat Shalom Lakim. Giving all praise and honor to the Holy One of Israel. His name is Yehovah, and His name is Yehovah forever and ever. And we thank Him for even allowing us to have another service, to hold another service on this holy Shabbat day. And we thank Him for the food that we have just eaten, thanking Him for the fellowship, and thanking Him for even the presence of our families and our loved ones so that we can enjoy the Shabbat day together. And we thank Yah even for the words that were spoken thus far this day, from the words of the Maftirah, the words of Mori Shemuel, and even those that participated even in the Torah reading. We thank Yah for allowing them to even come up to read of Yah's laws, even on this holy Shabbat day. Let us continue that same spirit in vain, and in unison, rather, to even sing this song, Of Thy Wondrous Works We'll Tell, found on page 10 in our Sidorim, our prayer books. Let us even lift up our voices unto Yah, thanking Him that He is the source of our lives, and thanking Him that He controls every and anything in this world. And we thank Him that we are serving Him, and we thank Yah even for a true and a living power that we serve. So let us even sing, Of Thy Wondrous Works We'll Tell. The heavens declare it, the glory is thine, the earth and its beauty shows honor divine. Hallelujah, the Creator of to Thee we lift up our voices, sing of the He may give heart and mind, Thy wondrous works will tell. And when we do we'll cry unto Thee, for lo and Thou is Thy mercies will see. Thou sendest Thine angel to show us the way. To Thee we sing our praise. He may give heart and mind, and wrong. Oh, Thy wondrous works will tell. Sing of the might of Yah. He may give heart and mind, Thy wondrous works will
Yisrael, Yehovah Eloheinu, Yehovah Echad. Ve'ahavta et Yehovah Elohecha, B'kal lebavka, Uvkal nafseka, Uvkal miodecha. V'hayu harva'im ha'ele asher nokim azalka yom al levabecha. V'shenam tam levanecha, V'devarta bam. B'shiv deka b'beiteka, Uvlek leka b'derek, Ushak b'ka uvkumecha. Yehovah Elohei Abraham Yitzchak Yisrael. Modim anaknu alecha Yehovah Bishbo Shabbat Hazeh. Shabbat Shemini anaknu po lefanecha lahalel shimka. Ataha Elohim bahashamayim mima'al ha'aretz mitakat we'ein od Yehovah. Toda Rabbah Bishbo Ahava Shelka. Toda Rabbah Bishbo Kastika wa Amiteka. Toda Rabbah Yehovah Bishbo Mishpaktenu. O Yehovah Naknu Zerakim Odka. Naknu Oibim Odka Yehovah. Ha'el Ne'eman. Ha'el Gibor. Ha'el Yahweh. Baruch Shem Kedbo Le'olam Ha'ed. Blessed be thy great, magnificent, and holy, wonderful name, O Yah. For thou art great and highly to be praised. We thank you for blessing us with the gift of life. You have renewed our days, O Yah. You have given us strength, and we give thanks unto thy name. Even as the Abib is slowly approaching, O great King, and things are starting to bud and blossom and renew, we ask that you'll give us even a new spirit, that we can stand before thee with confidence and proclaim thy greatness even amongst all people, that we will say that you are our help. You have been the one that have provided for us in our lives. You give us the strength that we need to go on day by day, because the pressures of life can be so hard upon us, O great King. Allow us to seek thy face and to seek thy wisdom, to seek you with our whole heart and our whole being, that we will be able to even stand up against any adversity, so nothing can stop us on our journey to move forward, even forward to the promised land. Even the promises that you have even bestowed upon us, we ask and we pray that we can take hold of it, that we can reap the blessing that you have in store for us, so no longer will we live under the curse, but we will live under the goodness that Yah has proclaimed unto us as thy people. We thank you, O great King, and we thank you that you are returning us. And we pray that we will be accepted even in the highest courts of your glory. We pray that you will accept us even with our flaws, O great King, even with our shortcomings, and the time that we have even fallen short, O Yah. Give us the strength that we need to proceed. Give us the insight that we need to make the right decisions. Bless us with the right state of mind, so the words that we speak will be words that will uplift one another and not tear each other down. Oh Yah, how can we move forward if you're not with us? How can we continue the journey on this life if you're not there to protect us? We are nothing without you. We cannot move on without you. So we call upon thy name and we seek thy goodness. Correct us and measure, but please don't utterly destroy us. And let us proclaim thy greatness while we have the breath of life, while we have the ability to speak, while our senses work to the full capacity to proclaim there is none like the great King that we serve. Yah Yehovah, blessed be thy greatness. May you forever be glorified, magnified, and uplifted. May you forever remember thy people Israel and all the people that seek in thy face, O Yah. Because we know thou art great beyond the borders of Israel, and every tongue and every knee shall bow, every tongue shall swear that there's none like the great King who created all things and everything. So we praise thee, and we uplift thee this day. Please smile to Filatenu. Please hear our prayer. Tikwa Bel Otanu, please receive us, O Yah, in thy love and thy mercy. We give thanks unto thy name forever and ever. Hallelujah! 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 Hallelujah!
O Shema Yisrael, Yahovah Eloheinu, Yahovah Eloheinu, Yahovah Eloheinu, O Shema Yisrael, Yahovah Eloheinu, Eloheinu, Yahovah Echad. O Baruch Shemenu, Ma'akus Soleh Olam, Ma'akus Soleh Olam, Ma'akus Soleh Olam, O Baruch Shemenu, Ma'akus Soleh Olam.
Please be seated. Give all praise and thanks to the true and living power that we serve, the power of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, our power and king in these days and times. As we just said, that he doeth only wondrous things. And let all Israel say, what? Amen. So let it be done, because our Yah, he lives, and he lives forever. This time we're going to go into our psalm service for the day. Those psalms being the 79th psalm, the 121st psalm, the 124th psalm, and we conclude with the 148th psalm. And at this time, let us even welcome our sister, and let us even praise Yah for even having her here, as well as all of us here. But let us even say hallelujah, and let us welcome our sister, even the Red Magdiel, to lead us in Psalm 79. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
So Yah for allowing us all to be here today, to the Yah for allowing us to see another Shabbat day, and for us getting close to the holy season. So Yah for all things and everything.
Amen.
O Yah, the heathen are come into thine inheritance. They have defiled thy holy temple. They have made Yerushalayim into heaps.
They have given the dead bodies of thy servants to be food unto the fowls of the heavens, the flesh of thy holy ones unto the beasts of the earth.
They have shed their blood like water round about Jerusalem with none to bury them.
We are become a taunt to our neighbors, a scorn and derision to them that are round about us.
How long, O Yah, wilt thou be angry forever? How long will thy jealousy burn like fire?
Pour out thy wrath upon the nations that know thee not, and upon the kingdoms that call not upon thy name.
For they have devoured Akhot and laid waste his habitation.
Remember not against us the iniquities of our forefathers. Let thy compassion speedily come to meet us, for we are brought very low.
Help us, O Yah, for our salvation, for the sake of the glory of thy name, and deliver us, and forgive our sins for thy name's sake.
Wherefore should the nations say, where is their power? Let the avenging of thy servants' blood that is shed be made known among the nations in our sight.
Let the groaning of the prisoner come before thee, according to the greatness of thy power. Set free those that are appointed to death.
And render unto our neighbors sevenfold into their bosom their reproach wherewith they have reproached thee, O Yah.
So we that are thy people and the flock of thy pasture will give thee thanks forever. We will tell of thy praise to all generations.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Today again for all of our lives, for allowing us to see some warmer days and see sunlight a little longer,
Amen.
for letting us go and come in peace and safety. Please be with us and all our families near and far, and praying that the Most High wraps his arm of protection and mercy around all of us. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Psalms 121, let us welcome even our young brother, young Bakor Eliyahu Ben Boaz, Ben Zavulu. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Shabbat Shalom. Hallelujah.
I raise my eyes toward the mountains, where my help comes from.
My help cometh from Jehovah, who made heaven and earth.
He will not allow your foot to slip. Your protector will not slumber.
Behold, he that keepeth Israel doth neither slumber nor sleep.
The Lord protect you. The Lord is a shelter right by your side.
The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night.
The Lord will protect you from all harm. He will protect your life.
Jehovah shall guard thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and forever.
Everybody else in my life,
Amen.
and everybody else's.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Thanking the Creator for our young boys and girls who are even praising the Holy One of Israel. And we pray that the name of Yah will never even be dismissed from their mouths and their hearts. Hallelujah. Let us welcome even the Red Naima for Psalms 124. Torah Yah for her safe arrival, all the way from Raleigh, her and Eliana. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
If it had not been Jehovah who was for us, let Israel now say.
If it had not been Jehovah who was for us, when men rose up against us,
Then they had swallowed us up alive when their wrath was kindled against us.
Then the waters had overwhelmed us. The stream had gone over our soul.
Then the proud waters had gone over our souls.
Blessed be Jehovah, who hath not given us as a prey to their teeth.
Our soul is escaped as a bird out of the snare of the fowlers. The snare is broken and we are escaped.
Our help is in the name of Jehovah, who made heaven and earth. Amen.
Once again, told I Jehovah for my life and the life of all of you here today.
Amen.
A great privilege to be before you all, and a great privilege to get off that road and be here again
Hallelujah.
today.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
A safe arrival for us all. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Last but certainly not least, let us welcome even Chief Malachi in our midst, Naftali, to lead us in song 148. Hallelujah. Hallelujah for your safe arrival. As he's gone solo today, he usually has his family with him. Hallelujah for your protection, even by yourself. Hallelujah.
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 Praise ye Jehovah from the heavens. Praise him in the heights.
Praise him, all his angels. Praise him, all his hosts.
Praise ye him, sun and moon. Praise him, all ye stars of light.
Praise him, ye heavens of heavens, and ye waters that are above the heavens.
Let them praise the name of Jehovah, for he is commanded.
Hallelujah.
And they were created.
He hath also established them forever and ever. He hath made a decree which shall not be transgressed.
Praise Jehovah from the earth, ye sea monsters, and all deeps.
Fire and hail, snow and vapor, stormy rain fulfilling his words.
Mountain and all hills, fruitful trees and all cedars.
Beasts and all cattle, creeping things and winged fowl.
Kings of the earth and all peoples, princes and all judges of the earth.
Both young men and maidens, old men and children.
Let them praise the name of Jehovah, for his name
Hallelujah.
alone is exalted. His glory is above the earth and heaven.
And he hath lifted up a horn for his people, a praise for all his holy ones, even for the children of Israel, a people near unto him. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. First of all, giving all thanks to the supreme intellect of the universe, to the God of all our forefathers, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, the Elohei Israel, the great, mighty, and revered God, the Most High God, who indeed is our creator, maker, owner, and possessor of all things and everything.
Amen.
Secondly, giving respect due to the leadership here. Saw Aharon, the Kohanim, the Morim, the brotherhood, the sisterhood, giving respect to my leader, Hanassis, the 4 beings of womb of Shemini Israel.
Amen.
Just asking that the Most High continue to guide us and bless us with knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Asking that the Most High send his angels down to let us get to our destinations speedily and safely.
Amen.
And also asking that the Most High God put in all of us a renewed spirit during this time that's approaching the time of Pesach. Regardless of the time that we're celebrating it in, don't let that separate us because we're still brothers and sisters.
Hallelujah.
So
Amen.
ask that the Most High God continue to bless us all with his guidance and love and protection. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Amen. So God, beautiful words, Chief. As always, and all the men and women, the young men and women that read the song, beautiful words, we thank you. And we ask that the Creator will continue to do the same for you as you have requested for him to do for us as well. So blessed be the name of God. Thanking the Most High for such beautiful words that are left on record. Just want to point out, as I listened to Maurice Shumwell this morning, who did a phenomenal job on a portion of Shemini, and you realize that all of the birds and all of the things that he's shown us, the animals, and I was just reading here, as Chief was reading, he said, praise ye Jehovah from the earth, you sea monsters and all deeps. Even though Moray was teaching us that we should not be eating these things, but they too have a purpose on earth as well. To praise the Holy One of Israel. He said what? He said mountains and all hills, fruitful trees and all, beasts and all cattle, creeping things and winged fowl. Didn't we see some creeping things this morning as Moray was showing up? All winged fowl. So they have a purpose on earth as well, even though the Creator told us not to eat those things. And so you can imagine how everything that's created by Yah has a purpose, and they serve a purpose by praising the Holy One of Israel. So we should all, brothers and sisters, be proud to be a part of that, to give praise. Because you know what? We sing it every Shabbat. Kol Han Shama, Te Hallelujah. Let everything that hath breath, what? Praise Yahweh. Hallelujah. At this time, let us welcome even our sister Akhot Kenya, even for the word of the week. Let us welcome her at this time. Hallelujah.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Okay, so this week I'm going to tell you a story about a family member named Yiftach. Yiftach was born in a family that I would venture to say missed a lot of important family value lessons. And I say that to say because he had siblings who, while they shared the same father, they didn't share the same mother. And they ridiculed him to the point where he ran away. So we all know that if you only share one parent, that makes you no less sibling or related than if you have to share the same parent from both mother and father. So it was so difficult for him that he ran away. And so years later, he built a home somewhere else, and he kind of made the acquaintances of some, they called them scoundrels, from what I was reading, in another city. So years later, or sometime later, the Israelites got into some problems, and they thought it best that they called him back to kind of lead them in war against the people that were trying to take us captive. So when they went to get him, his response was, well, nobody was there for me when they threw me out or drove me away. Why do you need me now? And the response was, well, that was old. That was before. Let's not talk about that. So you're going to come and help us. So he decided to come and help them. Come and help us. And come back and try to defeat the people that were trying to take us captive. So he asked the Most High to help him be victorious. And he promised the Most High, if he allowed him to be victorious, when he got back home, the first thing that came out of his home, he would offer up as a burnt offering. So this, be mindful, this was the time of the judges, and
everybody did that, which was right.
Exactly. Why? And you can, from what I spoke in the beginning, there was an absence of clearly parental and community guidance, because I don't understand how that happened with his brothers and everything. But anyway. So, long story short, he was victorious in the war, and he went home, and would you believe, the first thing to come out of his house was his daughter, his only child. So she came out to meet him. He immediately must have felt extreme compunction, okay, deep regret, and his appearance was that of compunction. Okay. Lugubrious was how he must have looked when he realized that was the first thing to come out of his home. And compunction is what he must have felt when he realized it was her. He got 2 words this week, yes, the last week. Okay.
Lugubrious. Lugubrious.
All right.
I think they're more interested in the daughter that came out. Response.
We go back to Lugubria.
Hallelujah. All right, she's going to strangulate her. Hallelujah. We thank Cocaine for that. We have 2 words this week, lugubrious and compunction. All right? All right. So let's, I think that she's going to do a wrap-up soon. We do that quiz. All right? Brotherhood is trying to maintain their championship status. So we need Malkiel to get these words. All right? Hallelujah. If not, if we lose, then we're going to be looking lugubrious. All right? Please stand before Yehovah. So let's sing a song so that we can go into our other segments for the day. Hallelujah. I hope that you could sit tight and be patient with us as we go through the afternoon segment. Hallelujah. Let us sing the song, Baruch Hashem. Let us bless the name of God. Found on page 6 down to Doreen. Let us sing and lift up our voices unto the great King who has given us bread and water, food, clothing, shelter, all those things. We sing up to him. Baruch Hashem, Sheyanu.
Baruch Hashem, El Yahovah. Baruch Hashem, El Yahovah. Baruch Hashem. Come on, Israel. Let's sing. Blessed be the name. Not my name, but God's name. Come on. Blessed be the name of Yahovah. Blessed be the name of Yahovah. Blessed be the name, blessed be the name of Yahovah. Thank you. No teleke, come on, Israel. No teleke, no Let us welcome even the Saw the Bayit, even our leader here, Shabby Israel, Hebrew family of Charlotte, Saw Aharon.
Shabbat Shalom.
That's a compliment. Good job. How's everybody doing today? How's lunch?
Great.
Three cakes, boys. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you what precipitated that happy bacon feeling I had yesterday. But My brothers threw me a belated birthday party last week, this week, on Michonne. A very, very beautiful event. I thank Akayel and the brothers for doing such a
Turn to speak.
It put me in a real good mood. And I just felt that I felt that I owed them just a token of gratitude. And so I knew one cake wouldn't be enough. So I ended up baking 2, and I said, if I come in here with 2 cakes and the sisters find out, that's gonna be my hit. So I ended up baking 3 cakes. Getting kind of good at it, actually. Even though it's a dangerous profession.
Chief baker.
And my grandsons, I tell you, they go crazy. Is this one for us? Nope. Is that one for us? Nope. Is that one for us? Nope. They'll be all right. Okay. We're going to get serious for a few minutes. If you have a paper and pencil, I think you might want to take it out. We're getting ready to cover a very heavy topic. No cameras, no phones on, no recording, no live streaming. I will not, at this point, unless we decide otherwise, agree to change anything that we do in the building. Because some of these things that we're going to read, I'm not going to say they're questionable, but if the person who is trying to, is trying to observe them based on some of this information, if they're not accurate about what they're doing, then they could cross the line and violate the season. So we're not going to change anything. Before we get into that, we're bringing Tahila up from New York. She's going to be visiting us via what, Skype? Zoom, that's new. And so she's going to help us with this. Is she on the line yet?
She is.
Shalom, Tahila.
Shalom.
You're frozen. Taylor, you're on the air. She can't hear. Maria, am I hooked up that she can hear what I'm saying from the mic?
All right.
One more, Ray. In the meantime, you don't want to sing a song? No. Oh, I thought you was going to catch me out there. No. Yeah,
Just give me a minute, just a minute.
The grandson asked me today, he said, "You're in a good mood, you gonna sing a song?" No. I baked 3 cakes, that tells you I'm in a good mood. You don't need to have me sing a song. Okay, so in the meantime, while he's getting that together, we're gonna do some what's going on.
You can hear?
As soon as you're ready.
She can hear.
Shalom, Tahila. We can't hear you now. All right, he's got a couple of things he needs to do. Yeah, plugging her up would be a good idea.
Yes.
Shalom, Tahila.
Shalom.
Technology is awesome.
Good.
I think my mic is off now.
Tamshichi.
Okay, you can hear me, Tahila?
Okay.
Good to see you. You're looking well. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
The whole family is here observing you. And I just did an intro to let them know that you and your committee have come up with this, your conclusions. I just want to tell everyone you have a paper and pencil so you can take notes. And we will see what we will make available to you, because obviously if you don't have that information that you can look at down the line, it might be important. So we're going to talk about that later. Now, Tehillah, how would you like us to do this? Do you want to read this document and explain what it says, or do you want us to have a reader and then you stop us and you explain what it says? What is your preference?
I can just read it.
Okay, great.
Okay, so I'm gonna just get started.
All right. Now,
Shabbat shalom.
Till, before you do, I'm sorry, before you do, we'll take, I don't know if you want to take intervals of questions, or I don't want to stop you, because obviously there's a delay in the communication. So whenever you think you need to explain it, I'll let you just read it and explain it, and then we'll take a question and answer period at the end, okay?
Okay, do you want me to actually go through, like read each of the passages where we, the words that were found, or can I just skip over that?
I'll let you do it at your discretion.
Okay. All right. All right, so I'll start with the introduction. The Passover, or Feast of Unleavened Bread, occurs in the first month of the Israelite year and commemorates the exodus of our ancestors from Egypt. The feast, which lasts for 7 days, starts with Passover, or Pesach, which falls at dusk on the 14th day of the first month. The 15th day marks the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, or Chag Matzot, and is a sacred occasion, or Mikra Kodesh, in which work is forbidden. The last day of the feast, the 21st of the month, is also a Mikra Kodesh. During Chag Matzot, Israelites are instructed to eat unleavened foods called Matzot. We are also forbidden from eating seor, chametz, and machmetzet. The meanings of these three words have been heavily debated in our congregations and communities, and to date, there's still much confusion as to what is allowed in our Chag Matzot diet. Do the words refer only to baked goods? Are fermented products allowed? Are we only to avoid yeast and not other leavening agents? Can we eat rice and beans or drink wine? And as a response, many of us avoid rice, legumes, and corn, called kitnio, as a group, and all fermented and processed foods such as cheese, wine, and prepackaged snacks during Chag Matzot. It's unclear, however, whether abstaining from these foods is a matter of tradition or a matter of law, and this lack of clarity contributes to the ongoing confusion as to what foods are permitted, what's forbidden, and why. So our work as a committee was to clarify the dietary law by examining the three key words that we know for sure are forbidden, seor, chametz, and machmetzet, in the context in which they're used throughout the Tanakh. And so by studying all the instances of the word's use, instead of just those pertaining to the feast, helped to give us a greater understanding of the meaning. Does anyone have any questions so far? And obviously I can't see anyone, so y'all have to tell me.
I'll let you know. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, so we started with the word seor, which appears 5 times in the Tanakh. I'll go through these since it's just 5. So Exodus 12:15, it says, 7 days you shall eat unleavened foods. From the first day, banish the seor from your houses. For all who eat chametz the first day until the 7th day, his soul shall be cut off from Israel. Similar, Exodus 12:19, for 7 days seor should not be found in your houses. Exodus 13:7, you shall eat unleavened food for 7 days, and there shall not be seen unto you seor in all your borders. Leviticus 2:11, it talks about the meal offerings that we bring to the Creator should not have chametz, because all seor and all honey cannot be offered by fire. And the last citing is in Deuteronomy 16:4, when it says, you shall not be seen unto you seor in all your borders for 7 days. And so these passages suggest that seor and chametz can be used interchangeably and sometimes seem to refer to the same thing. So for instance, Leviticus 2:11 says not to use chametz in a meal offering because seor cannot be placed on the altar. And in another verse, Exodus 12:15, it tells us to get rid of seor out of our houses because anyone who eats chametz will be punished. And so the instruction in the same verse to eat matzot shows us that we contrast matzot with seor and chametz, so they're opposites. And so since matzot are unleavened versions of leavened foods, then we can infer that seor refers to leavening agent, and or the products that contain them. And we'll get more into that when we talk about chametz. Any questions on that?
Okay, Yemiyahu has a question.
Yeah, thought I was about. I don't know if she's going to touch on it a little later, because she's saying said oil just means leavening.
Can you speak a little bit louder?
We're going to give him a mic.
Leave it. Shabbat shalom. Wait. I don't know if she can hear me. Can she hear me though? No, my question is, she can hear me. You can repeat the question. My question is, she's saying say oil means leavening.
Does say oil mean leavening?
As of right, no. So as of right now, just in that part, we can figure that se'or either refers to leavening agents or the products that contain them. As we go further, we find out that se'or refers to the leavening agents.
Okay.
For example, yeast.
Okay, so hold on.
Does that answer your question?
Okay.
And continue.
Okay. Okay, so the next word that we looked into was chametz, and that appears 17 times in the Tanakh, and 14 times of those is related to food. I'm not going to go into all of the instances, but we can provide the verses later on if you want them. And I'll go into what we came through, or what we came up out of that. So chametz is an interesting word because unlike se'or, it's also used as a verb, which may help to clarify the meaning. So Exodus 12:34 explains how the Israelites, being rushed out of Egypt, took their dough before yechmatz, so before it had gone through this condition. In Hosea 7:4, Elohim condemns the Israelites for their adulterous ways, which are out of control like dough in a hot oven that reaches chumsato. So again, another instance of the word chametz. So these two passages suggest that chametz refers to the leavened condition of dough. So chametz is caused by se'or, or we can say that se'or creates chametz. So if we look at Leviticus 2:11 again, which forbids chametz in an offering because se'or is not allowed on the altar, this conclusion makes sense. You cannot have leavened bread, an example of chametz, as part of a sacrifice, because yeast, which is an example of se'or, is forbidden in an offering. And the same goes for other chametz, or leavened products, like cakes or muffins, and other se'or, or leavening agents, like baking powder or baking soda. So chametz is a leavened product, and se'or is a leavening agent. So se'or causes chametz. So for instance, yeast, which you would use to bake bread. So yeast would be an example of se'or, and chametz would be an example of the bread. There are some biblical Hebrew dictionaries that translate se'or as sourdough, and this further clarifies the definition of se'or as a leavening agent. So in ancient times, Israelites and other nations would capture wild yeast from the air through a week-long process, creating what's called a sourdough starter. And you can actually do it today. A lot of bakers and bread purists will create a sourdough starter instead of using commercialized yeast that you purchase from a store. And the way it works is you mix flour and water until you get like this slurry, and you let it sit open in the air for several hours, and it attracts wild yeast and bacteria that are naturally occurring in the air, and it begins to ferment the mixture. You add flour and water every day, and again, you can find out how to do this online. You can add flour and water every day. You allow the yeast to multiply. So you're essentially feeding the yeast, so it multiplies. And after about a week, you're able to use some of that se'or, or that sourdough starter, to bake leavened bread. So it behaves just like the commercialized yeast that you find in the store today. So back then, when you didn't have commercialized yeast, this is how you would get the yeast. So the idea of se'or meaning sourdough, when we talk about sourdough in that case, it is essentially yeast, or it is a leavening agent. So it's not a contradiction when some people say, well, se'or means sourdough. It's not sourdough as in like a piece of dough that has gone sour. It is yeast, and for all intents and purposes. Okay, so it falls right into the definition of se'or as a leavening agent, along with commercialized yeast or baking powder. Question?
Okay, so it sounds to me like yeast in that form, in the natural form, is a living organism, is it?
Yes, like bacteria and microbes and other things, right. So it's naturally occurring.
Okay, and when it's in the package, what is it?
What do you mean? What is
Yeast
it in the package?
Is that a derivative of it, or how would you describe yeast in the
Yes,
package?
it's cultivated.
Okay.
So like for instance, when we talk about wine, and we all know that we've seen kosher for Passover wine, that yeast, instead of being cultivated off of grains, it's cultivated off of fruits and vegetables. So it's still very much yeast based. They just changed they say, well, we can have yeast as long as it doesn't it's not cultivated on grains, and they use that to create what they call kosher for Passover wine, but it's still yeast.
Trickery. Okay, move on. Thank you.
Okay, and then the last word that we looked at, which was just used twice in the Tanakh, and that's machmetzet, and it has the same definition as chametz. So machmetzet, like chametz, just refers to leavened foods, such as bread and cakes and other products that contain leavening. So based on the study of those words, which we looked at in all of their instances in which they occur, we concluded that obviously we are forbidden from eating leavened products or products that contain any leavening agents. But then we talked about, well, what is a leavening agent and what exactly does it mean for something to be leavened? And so leavening agent is a substance that's added to dough to cause fermentation. Okay, and this form of fermentation, which we call leavening, is what causes the dough to rise. And it can be biological or chemical. So yeast, for instance, is a biological leavening agent. It consumes sugar. Okay, so this is why a lot of times when you have recipes and you put in yeast, you'll drop a little bit of sugar on it because it feeds off of the sugar and it releases byproducts. And those byproducts that are being released, those gases, is what causes the dough to rise. And then you have chemical leavening agents such as baking powder and baking soda that work a lot faster than yeast does. So that's why when you have quick bread recipes that will use baking powder, baking soda, you don't have that wait time that you have with yeast. But they're all leavening agents, and so they are all forbidden. And so fermentation is the chemical breakdown of a substance that's caused by bacteria, yeast, or other microorganisms. And since the process of fermentation creates leavening, which is chametz or machmetzet, it raises the question of whether other fermented products, such as wine and yogurt, are also forbidden during the 7 days of Chag Matzot. And so what we did then is we just looked up how different a lot of common foods, how they are made. And I'll just go through the ones that we know for sure are definitely forbidden. For instance, beer, which is made of dried mashed grains that are mixed with hot water and then fermented with yeast. Chocolate is also fermented with yeast in a lot of cases. And there can be exceptions. These are just the most common ways that these things are made. And obviously, if we're not absolutely sure, if it's not something that you produce yourself, then we would want to do without it for those 7 days. Certain types of coffee, soy sauce is processed with yeast, vinegar, and wine, again, even kosher for Passover wine is processed with yeast. They just create their own rules to get around it, but it's nonsense. And so leavening is one result of fermentation. It is not the result. So just because something is fermented does not necessarily make it forbidden for Chag Matzot. For instance, when you have an apple or a banana that's cut and left out and it starts to turn brown, that process, oxidation, is a form of fermentation, but it is not leavened. Your apple that is left out is not suddenly going to become leavened if you eat it 24 hours later or whatever the case may be. So leavening just refers to a process that happens with dough, and it needs a leavening agent in order for that to happen. So one thing that I want to clarify, our purpose in doing this was just to see what the law says, not necessarily to change what it is that we're doing as a community or to start trying to add a whole bunch of things to our diet, but just to see specifically what is permitted and what isn't, and then personally plan to stick to the diet that we follow as a community, the very restricted diet where we pretty much just focus on fruits, veggies, meat, and matzot. So we're not saying that now we can go out and eat a whole bunch of other foods, but just to have an understanding of what is the law and then what we do traditionally as a community, so we can have that understanding. And so things like rice and beans and corn do not contain leavening agents, and they are not fermented. So even though we don't eat them traditionally, they are not problematic. They're not forbidden during the week of Chag Matzot. And that's about it. So, any other questions?
First, I want to thank you for a fantastic presentation. Of course, that includes the preparation and the work and the research that went into it. So, Maureen that helped out, Moray Yaya, Moray Tavel, Moray Shemuel, and yourself. You did a phenomenal job, and we really, really appreciate it. I had spoken to the community before you got on the call and explained to them that there were certain things that you were going to say that I knew just from reading it that we weren't going to change anything, because in order to say you want to add this and add that, we have to make sure that the process is going the way she said that it needs to go, because most of us laymen don't have that knowledge and understanding and expertise to make the decision, especially if we buy processed food from somebody else and they're going to use the cheapest, easiest form to produce it. We don't want to add that to our diets, and we certainly don't want to bring it on the premises because it may be in violation. So I just want to put that out there, and now I'll open the floor for any questions that you have for Akhot Chiyil. Well, everybody gets it.
Great.
Kane, we have a question from Akayil.
Not really a question, but we received a copy of the report.
Kane, I can produce this report, or I'll pass it out in the form of an email. Is that okay?
Yes, there's a typo on the last page. I'm sorry.
Okay, so what we're going to do, I have the document. What we're going to do is we're going to pass out a piece of paper to get everybody's email that wants this, and then we'll send it out in the email form. We're not going to print up all of these pages. It's about 10 pages. Certainly you can print it up if you want it. So what we'll do is get some paper in here, and before you leave, and while we're finishing up the day's events, because we still have another hour and a half here, we will get everybody's email address. Yahoo seems to be the one with the paper. We'll confiscate his notebook, and we'll get everybody's email address on there. Put your own email address on so we know we got it right. And then we will get it to you in the form of an email in the next few days. Okay? I see a hand in the back. Coach Alishaba. Doda Alishaba.
I wanted to ask you and to Heal or anybody on the committee, is there any ongoing research going on? Sounds like what you did in terms of the board is complete. You did mention, for example, the rice, the beans, the corn as not being against the law, but as you've noted, there's a process that could be going on. So at this point, are you suggesting that the community do their own individual research in terms of these potential items, or is this committee still doing some research?
Well, they're not doing any more research. Anybody can do any research they want, but keep in mind that unless you're going to research every ingredient on an item and know what the interpretation of it, because they have scientific names, they change stuff around. The vinegar used to be called vinegar, but if they want you to buy it during Chag Matzot, they call it acetic acid. Okay, so that's how they change stuff up, just in the kosher for Pesach department when you go to these stores. We're not producing the foods. We're going to somebody else to produce the foods who we already know is making changes in order to make a profit. Okay, and they putting us in violation. All they have to do is pray over it and they get a pass, according to them. All right, if the rabbi says it's okay, then it's okay. All right, so we're not getting into that. If you want to do your own research, that's fine, but you need to make sure that you know what you're doing and what you're looking for. And again, unless you're interpreting the Hebrew, which they've done a lot of that for us, you really don't know if we're in dangerous territory. One of the main things was pasta. A lot of people want to have pasta. We used to say because it rises when it boils, that it's not kosher for Pesach. Okay, so for Chag Matzot. Now, some of the other ingredients in there, even though that may not be the case because if you add water to it, it's not necessarily fermenting it or leavening it, but they may have an ingredient that has leavening in it. Am I correct, Tila? Or would you change that?
I mean, if you're gonna get like, there's nothing wrong with pasta itself. Like if you're gonna make pasta at home, that's fine, and there's no leavening in it. If you're gonna purchase pasta that's pre-made, then you should definitely check out. I mean, if that's what you want to do, check out the ingredient list. Should just be, flour and water and egg and maybe some other things. But I wouldn't do it. But I don't think like on its face that there's anything wrong with the pasta. As long as the ingredients are basic, there's generally no leavening in pasta. It'll swell a little bit when you cook it, but that's not it's not being leavened.
And that's not the same as processed. In other words, a processed pasta is going to be dry. If you make it fresh like that, it's going to be moist, and be placed in water, it may rise a little bit, but it's not the same as taking it out of a box, where it's dried and it goes through that boiling process and what have you. Am I correct?
I mean, it's the same concept as rice.
Right.
It'll swell a little bit, but it's not leavened. Like on its face, there's nothing wrong with it. The question is, do you want to trust prepackaged food? Do you understand all of the ingredients on the list? Do you know exactly what they are? Right. But if it's, on its face, there's nothing wrong with it.
That's my point. Okay, just wanted to make that clear. So Maureen Tarvell doesn't need any more clarification because it was stated. I agree with him. Did your hand still go up, or you don't have the question? All right, so then let's hear what you have to say. Let's keep it quiet, folks.
Did you know the white rice process? What about the brown whole grain rice?
Can y'all repeat? Is somebody asking a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. He was waiting for him to finish the question. Go ahead.
Clarification on rice. I know white rice is.
Put it up there.
I know white rice goes through a process to turn colors, but what about the whole grain brown rice? All organic.
Whole grain brown rice, Tahila, organic. Is that something that we could trust?
Yeah, rice doesn't swell. I mean, not swell. Rice is not leavened. Swelling is not leavening. Leavening is a chemical process.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm talking, is white rice natural? Like, does white rice go through a process?
Hold on, we're not going to do it like that. I need to, in order to communicate with her, ask me the question, let me ask it to her and let her answer. Did you add to your question? I'm sorry, I got interrupted.
No, is white rice okay, or just brown rice? Like, I know white rice goes through a process before becoming white. So would that be also?
Okay, so what about white rice? He wants to know, he knows that that's processed. Is it okay?
I don't 100% know the process of how rice becomes white, but I know it's bleached and whatever, but unless something in that process includes a leavening agent, like unless there is some type of yeast or baking soda involved, there's nothing wrong with it. It might not be healthy for you, you might not want to do it, it's not the most natural rice that it is, but it doesn't go against the guidelines that we have for Chag Matzot.
Maureen Tarvell, Coach, we have another question.
So it's not a question, it's an ask of statement.
Okay. Take the mic.
I just want to make it clear that when we were speaking and when we were doing this, we have to understand that a lot of things we already knew were good for kosher or Pesach, but we cannot take it upon ourselves to do it because we don't produce these things on our own. They're produced and manufactured by the companies. They have a lot of things that they finished products and stuff that they put on it and sprinkle on it, and we don't know what is going on. We don't know what kind of ingredients they have in those products. So that's why we said we would rather stay away from those products because we're not sure. This Colin used to say, when in doubt, what?
Leave it out.
So we know that if we plant a potato and we grow it out the ground and we boil it, we're safe. But we're not boiling our own potatoes. We're buying potatoes and stuff from Food Line and from these supermarkets.
Okay.
So we're not safe at all.
Okay. Hold on. All right, I'm gonna let Akhot ask his question.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Oh, you gotta smile. Bear with me because I want some clarity on this. Pesach, is that a holy day?
All right.
Pesach, Slika, Bavakasha. Pesach, is that a holy day?
All right, well, what does it have to do with the Chag Matzot diet? She doesn't need to be on the call for that.
Oh,
That's
because
another question.
she started off with Pesach, and I wanted some clarity on that. If this is not about that, I could just save it for another time.
Pesach and the first day of Chag Matzot run simultaneously. So, yeah, Pesach is not a holy day, it's a holy time.
Okay, so holy time. Okay, hold on. I'll continue later on.
Okay, that's it. Does anyone else have a question for Akhot Tehillah before we let our sister go? Kane. One more question, Tehillah.
Shabbat shalom, Obama. This is out of the book of Yehoshua, right when we crossed over and went into the land. And I think she kind of answered it, but just like to have a little clarity. This is Yehoshua chapter 5, verse 11. And they did eat the produce of the land on the morrow after the Passover, unleavened cakes and parched corn in the same self day. So she's basically saying, like with the rice, I guess this parched corn that they're referring to right now, in its purest stage, there's no leavening agents in these particular foods, and it is permissible to eat during Pesach.
I'm sorry, I got interrupted. I didn't hear you what you were saying.
About the parched corn. The parched corn. I guess in its purest stage, we know about the manufacturers and everything, and they may put things in it. But in its purest stage, things like the corn and the rice, technically is kosher to Pesach as long as there's no leavening agents added to that. Is that correct?
Well, not necessarily right or wrong. If the corn is not, I don't know if you're talking about corn on the cob, then more than likely. Well, let me finish. If it's corn on the cob that you scrape off and you want to parch it, which is just letting it bake more or less, that might be kosher. But when you talk about rice, we've already had that conversation about rice. If it's processed, we don't know what they're adding into the process, you know, what they're putting on it to make it look pretty. You know, it's things like that, those byproducts, those other products that they add on that have nothing to do with the rice itself. A lot of times they add stuff on our foods just so it'll look nice in a package. And those things may have enzymes or have some kind of pork product or byproduct or whatever, you just don't know. But corn, if you scrape it off of a cob and you bake it, that's parched corn. I don't think that's you know, in violation of the Passover diet or the Chag Matzot diet. So Feast of Unleavened Bread diet. So I hope that answers your question. That's basically what you're asking. But rice, again, we don't know. We're not growing it, so we don't know what's happening with it because it is processed. Especially if it's white, it's even processed more than if it's brown. Okay? Any other questions? On once, twice. Tehillah, you have any final comments you want to make?
Nope.
She can't wait to get off the camera. I know her very well. Kane, we have one more question. Somebody just wants to keep you here a little longer. Hold on.
Shalom, shalom.
Did I see your hand?
My question is, you spoke about the sourdough, right? How long does it take for it to become, how long does it take if you put water and flour together? How long does it take for it to be not permissible for Passover in terms of becoming that sourdough where you can use it to make any like matzot or whatever?
From what I read, it usually takes about 1 to 2 weeks because it's a long process. I mean, if you just leave it out, if you leave out, for instance, flour and water just for a couple of hours, it's not going to rise. It's a long process, and you have to keep adding in flour and water to keep feeding that wild yeast that comes in. So it's a long process. It's not something that just takes a couple of hours or even just a couple of days. But once you have the starter, it will last for a very long time. And that's another thing. It doesn't need to be refrigerated. So if you think about people that don't have refrigeration, and it's not something that the Israelites created, Egyptians were doing, a lot of people were doing it, this is how they baked bread. Once you create that starter, you just continue to feed it every once in a while, and it will last for years.
Good point. And you know, if you think about the first Passover when they were running out of Egypt, they didn't have time to let that process because it takes days. And that explains why that bread hadn't risen and they just cooked it and it was unleavened bread. It makes a whole lot of sense just hearing how the natural process of fermentation takes place. That's something I did not know. Okay, Gaveret Naima has a question. I think that'll be the last one.
A little clarity on the rice that you said, because you said that we should not be eating it. I thought she said that it was okay. Not that we are concerned, or are concerned if it's brown or natural, that we know what it's made, but if you grew rice in your little pond out in the backyard, then it's okay.
Yeah.
For Passover.
The other thing that I'm saying is, like, in a perfect world, let's say we lived in our own land, we grew our own food, whatever the case may be, or we lived in a world where everybody feared the Creator and we didn't try to get around His law in any way. There would be nothing wrong with pasta, there would be nothing wrong with rice, there would be nothing wrong with beans, there would be nothing wrong with corn. And so what we're saying, there's nothing wrong with all of these things in their natural state, however they occur. Are we saying that we should now go out and eat all of these things on Chag Matzot? No, because things that are processed are beyond our control. We don't know what goes on in these factories. We don't know what these people are doing with our food, so we try to keep a very minimal diet to where we know, okay, we can't go wrong with fruits, we can't go wrong with vegetables, we can't go wrong with our matzot and the very minimal things that we eat. But in an ideal world, just on its face, are these foods okay according to what we know that is forbidden, seor, which is the leavening agent, and leavened products? Yes, rice is not leavening, pasta is not leavened, corn is not leavened, neither are beans, or a lot of these other foods that we eat. So that's what we're saying.
Good.
Okay, and the only time that we have to really worry about it in our community is the one Shabbat that you bring food in. You know, during Chag Matzot. We're just saying, don't change anything, even though you might decide, somebody in here may have already been doing it, or may decide, you know what, well, based on that, I want to go out and have rice. That's your prerogative. You know what chances you're taking, and we're just saying, we don't want to take those chances with you. So just don't bring them here, okay? Other than that, you know, people are going to do what they're going to do. We understand that, and we respect everybody's right to do whatever they want to do in their own homes. Okay? Is that it? We're going to let the sister go now. To heal up once again, we thank you for your research and everything you've done and I'll be in touch. Shalom. Was that good or what? Okay. You know what's going on. All right, family. Someone had a question earlier regarding Passover and is Passover a holy day? Again, as I was saying, Passover starts actually a little before the going down of the sun on the 14th day of Abib, which means that it's not a holy day, but it's a time that begins the holy season. And then it runs throughout the night. So once the sun goes below the horizon, Passover and the first day of Chag Matzot are running simultaneously until the sun rises in the morning. Okay? So I hope that answered that question. He's not in here any longer. If anyone has any follow-up on that, I'm open for a question. Anyone has a question on anything else, I'm open for a question. Okay? Don't wait till I start something else now. If you have these questions, let's bring them up. Cain.
Is there a specific, what about salt? Is there a specific type of salt that is used during Chag Matzot?
I believe that there is a certain kind of salt. Salt is processed a lot of, I'm sure, numerous different ways. There is salt that's kosher for Pesach, for Passover, I think. And then again, we are trusting our enemy on a lot of this. But if they tell us it's kosher for Passover, it's a natural element in the earth. So the more natural the form, the more likely it'll be kosher for Passover. Okay? So if you, let's hear what Maury has to say.
Shabbat Shalom Lechem. The salt, some of it has baking soda in it.
Right, that's why they have a difference between them. Okay, so you definitely don't want, and sometimes it's just there, and certain flour is in there just to separate the grains. So that's why you want to buy kosher for Passover salt, because at least they're going to try to eliminate some of those items. And you'll find that the kosher for Passover salt is usually coarser, it's usually more clingy, it'll clump more. And that's because it doesn't have these things in it. Even certain rice and certain things like that, they put in flour and things like that just so the item flows better and it looks better in a package. That's why some of these items is good to buy kosher for Passover, especially things like that. Seasonings definitely have different other things in it besides the item itself, the seasoning itself, in order to flow better and pour easier and things like that. So you want to, even with your seasonings, Maisha goes through the cabinet, certain seasonings she'll use throughout the year, certain ones she puts away. It's a part of the comments process and storing it away to make sure that, so you can, all of your seasonings, some people just say, oh, well, I'm not focusing on that, I'm thinking about the food. But that's going into your food. You're eating that too. So you really have to be careful if you're trying to be as diligent as I think we all want to be. Okay? Naphtali, okay?
Not dealing with Pesach, is that okay?
A question, sure.
Yeah, it's still dealing with the portion from this morning. And forgive me for my ignorance in advance. Hopefully you just provide a little clarification. This is dealing with, this is in the book of Vayikra, chapter 11. And I guess we can start at verse 32. I start at 29. And it reads on this wise. And these are the things which are unclean unto you among the swarming things that swarm upon the earth. Well, let's go to like that. 31. These are they which are unclean unto you amongst all that swarm. Whosoever doth touch them when they are dead, they shall be unclean until the evening. And upon whatsoever any of them when they are dead doth fall, they shall be unclean, whether it be a vessel of wood or raiment, skin or sack or whatsoever vessel it be. Wherewith any work is done, it must be put to water, and it shall be unclean till the evening, and then shall it be clean. It doesn't really touch on my question, but hopefully you can provide some clarity. Let's say, for instance, you have a bowl of rice. Let's use that for example. I hate to say rice right now, but you may have packed your food or whatever for lunch, and when you go to open it up, you see there's a dead fly on the top of your rice or whatever the case may be. Based on the law as far as these insects that may die, I know you're really talking about the pot and everything. Does that contaminates and makes the whole dish unclean, or are we just able to scoop out that little portion that the fly may be on and continue to eat the rest of your mazon?
I would be actually heading out to find something else to eat, personally. The thought, because this is the thing. It didn't land, let me just say this, okay? Because if, let's say it was a barrel of rice. Okay, so maybe the whole barrel wouldn't be spoiled because a fly dropped in it. But let me just say this. If I had a plate of food and I packed it in, I don't know how that fly got in there. The fly's been moving around and pooping and doing a whole lot of other things in there before it died. Okay, so I'm not going to eat it. All right, now if you want to scoop off the top, that's up to you. But in terms of what the law says that if it touches it, now, again, I'm not talking about a barrel of rice. Now, so if you want to scoop off a whole, if you have a plate of food and you scoop off the top, you're at the bottom of the plate. Okay? I mean, I don't know how high you pile it, but when in doubt, in this case, I would say leave it out. Well, it tells you it's going to be unclean, but you're asking how much of it is unclean. It's going to be unclean based on what you just read. But you want to know, like, which grains are unclean. I think it's a little more, that's like kind of dice it down kind of small, and I don't know if that's really what you want to do. Okay, when you're talking about a bowl of food.
What about the bag of rice?
Bag of rice? I would say this. I would say this about a bag of rice. My brain works pretty fast with these things, so I'm just going to tell you all these things. A bag of rice, first of all, you're going to take off the top and you're going to scoop out the bug. Okay? Then, if you decide a bag of rice, you may not be cooking the whole bag, I don't know. But if you're cooking, let's say you're cooking the whole bag of rice, you're going to wash the rice before you eat it. I would consider the rice unclean, but it's not going to kill you. But if I wouldn't eat that rice and then come up here on the Mizbeach Tefillah, knowing that it had a bug in it, okay, a dead bug in it. So in other words, there's certain things you can eat that might not be necessarily spiritually clean. That's not gonna kill you. But when you eat it and what you do after you eat it, because it can make you unclean. There's certain things that the Creator said we can eat or we can do, but we'll be unclean until the evening. I would put it in that category. You can go ahead and consume it if you feel that, okay, this whole thing is not dirty. But because for the sake of not standing before the Creator under a condition where you're unclean and you know that you're possibly unclean, other than that, just be unclean until the evening and you'll be okay. I want to let the Moreh answer because he may want to correct something I said. So I'm going to let him go first and then I'll take your hands in the back.
It's not a correction, it's mainly, I have a video showing you what happens when a fly lands on food. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but okay, you do that now. Yeah, I'll see your point. Okay, I'll get your hand in a minute. Let him show the video, and then you can make your point. Okay, so both of you in the back. Are you prepared to do that now? Yeah, I know.
So just like when it lands, it's actually
shedding stuff.
Yes, secreting little worms, larvae.
He's pooping on your food, like I said.
Yeah,
okay, that's enough. I just wanted to make a point, and I never knew that, but common sense tells me he's not standing in one spot and dying in one spot. Before he died, he walked around your whole plate of food, dropped a few things off, and you scooped up that, but you ate his poop. Okay. So you got, I'm gonna take the hand in the back first, and then Gaveret, Naima, I see your hand.
Shabbat Shalom. Isn't there some place in the Tanakh that says if something is dry and if something dies on it is not unclean but it is wet, that it becomes
the next verse.
Yeah, he said that the seed.
It's right here.
Came, yeah, but when you're talking about a fly, his scenario, generally speaking, and that's what I said. It could be unclean, it could be removed. Certain things have to be thrown out, and certain things, porous items may have to be destroyed, but other things can be, it could be reused. They may be unclean.
It's not unclean if it's dry, even if the fly is on it.
Are we talking about food, or are we talking about?
Seeds, whatever, it is still clean when it's dry.
Okay, yeah.
The water becomes a
And also 36.
Right, the water just can spread the germs.
Read it?
Yeah, read it, because I'm trying to skim it. I see your hand.
Where you want?
Start at 34.
All food therein which may be eaten that on which water cometh shall be unclean, and all drink in every such vessel that may be drunk shall be unclean. And everything whereupon any part of their carcass falleth shall be unclean, whether oven or range for pots, it shall be broken in pieces. They are unclean and shall be unclean unto you. Nevertheless, a fountain or a cistern wherein is a gathering of water shall be clean. But he who toucheth their carcass shall be unclean. And if anything of their carcass fall upon any sown seed which is to be sown, it is clean. But if water be put upon the seed, and all of their carcass fall thereon, it is unclean unto you. So that's what that was.
Right. Yeah.
The water becomes the conductor. I think those
This scenario, a dry bag of a barrel of dry rice to the fire or whatever. Exactly. It's not unclean, right?
It's not unclean, but it depends on how that thing got on there. So I said a barrel of rice the whole rice is not going to be unclean, but you want to make sure that anything that he could have come into contact with is removed. So we don't have to worry about any transfer of any germs or any secretions or anything like that. Especially if you're going to eat it. I mean, he's talking about a plate of food that was already cooked. Yeah. So that's how the whole question started. It's morphing right now, and I'm trying to keep up with the more, what's going on, the process.
The whole idea of rice. Remember, rice is the finished product. Before it's rice, it's called paddy, with a coating over it. So if the carcass falls on paddy, it is clean. But once it is removed, the bran is removed from it. That's where you see that white or the brown rice. So once that is removed, any dead thing that lands on it, it's unclean.
Good point.
Okay.
Moray has a point. He wants to. Cohen has a point. Go back.
Not only that, to add what Moray said, Kenya made a very valid point, which I was about to raise my hand and mention. Here you have to understand, even with after the coating or the patty is removed, that rice is still dry. That rice is still dry. It hasn't gotten wet yet. You can plant dry rice itself. You understand? So that's technically a seed, just like any bean would be a seed as well that can be planted. But once that bean gets wet, or that grain of rice gets wet, it becomes porous now, and it can absorb the whatever unclean or germs that come from that dead animal or that dead carcass of the fly or whatever. That's the thought that makes it unclean as well when you think about it. So that's why the Lord said, if it just falls on in this barrel of rice, and it's just a barrel of dry rice, and you see that bean or you see that dead fly, you can brush off the top stuff and keep that. But if this whole barrel of rice got wet for some reason, and that dead thing is inside of that wet rice, I'm throwing all of that away. It can be a barrel, a bag, whatever. Once water wets all of that in there with that dead carcass in there, all of that gets thrown out. And that's the thought behind it.
Okay, I think we beat that dead horse enough. All right. Let's move on. Any other questions? Hey, Moray, Ms. Sade.
Shabbat Shalom. Put that back on you. Something to keep in mind, since we're talking about kashrut, which is laws of something being kasher, fit to eat, whether fit for Passover, fit for any day of the year, is just for us to understand, because we have people who come from other communities, if they're rabbinic, they probably take offense to say, oh, they're just making up laws. They have very complicated rules. It's that they add to the Torah. And those additions to the Torah also make exceptions to the rule. So kashrut, when you see kosher bread, they're looking and inspecting to see if there's any insects on the wheat that went into the bread that you're eating, right? So it's like, okay, that's good examination. Kosher for Pesach will have, like, I don't know, a can of soda, Pepsi. Well, they're saying corn syrup is in it, and we'll use acetic acid, and from us, in our perspective, that's completely kasher. We say it's questionable, they say it's not questionable, it's fine. So they have rules for it, so I would just say you have to know the rules of the organizations that are claiming to put a certification on it. We are stricter when it comes to Pesach. But in other areas, they may be stricter, so we just have to know.
I don't know. When they start changing vinegar to acetic acid, that to me is trickery.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
Because they're adding to the Torah, they're changing things.
Yeah, exactly. So why, they're very difficult to trust. We don't have some things. That's why we say stick to the natural stuff. If you go out there and buy natural fruit, natural, vegetables in their fresh state, and you want to add a meat to it, don't buy any meat that's been processed or whatever. You buy a simple whatever, and they eat that food for the 7 days. That way you don't have to worry about what their rules are and how to dissect their whatever their traditions are, because you don't know who's doing this and what standards they're using. And when you start, when I go and and I see that I go to buy ketchup, which I used to do. I don't do anymore. I don't have any ketchup for Chag Matzot. I'm fine without it. I thought I couldn't live without ketchup doing Chag Matzot. Okay? And I went there and something told me, and I'm shopping for like 10 people. Everybody's like, Aharon, go down there and get that. I go all the way down to Shalom Park, down past there, down to International, and to buy this stuff. And I'm standing there saying to myself, why? How can they produce this same product? And so I had to go through the items, and I got my phone out and started looking stuff up. And the vinegar, they used to say vinegar on any other ketchup that they have in there, now says acetic acid. So I'm like, I don't know what that is. Let me look it up. It's a leavening agent. It's a sa'or. So, I mean, to me, that's just changing the name so people will buy it. And there's no reason why we can't do without it. So, no, some of the stuff, yeah, I get what he's saying, but some of the stuff is straight up, we don't want to lose any money. And so we're going to figure out a way, and again, they sign off on it. I've been around Jews in New York, and what they say is, if we pray over it, it's kosher. They could kosherize a pig if they want to. That's the way they did it. So I have very low patience for them when it comes to trusting them on these type of issues. Let's let that go. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, we're gonna move into the book. Which book? Oh, y'all want to do? Oh, they saying, what's going on? What are you talking about? How you kidding me? What's going on? All right, children, pay attention. You're not too young to be a victim. 5th grader in South Carolina got into a fight and ended up dead. A 5th grader. How old are you in 5th grade? 10? 10-year-old girl. And then she was beat up by 2 girls from what I understand. But they only suspended 1, so I don't know the information I got in the beginning was 2 people. A 5th grader gets into a fight. They don't know where this fight happened, what happened to her. All they got, and they suspended the girl. Okay, she killed somebody, she just gets, I don't know where this is going. But the point is for our children, number 1, when I was in school, you got into a fight, you just fought. Now, you can't even hit back, and you're considered a villain. And the teachers can't break the teachers cannot break up the fight, because if they get hurt, then they're gonna get sued. They're gonna sue. So if they hurt your kid, they're gonna get. It's a whole lot of rules. We have to tell. That's why we have to have these conversations with our children. This is what you do and this is what you don't do. Every house is not the same. Some parents are gonna say, if somebody hits you, beat them up, but that's what this girl was told, and so she killed her classmate. So do you tell them how much to fight? If you tell them to hit back, do you tell them when to stop? Or do you tell them to beat them until they stop moving? We have to be careful how we train our children. First of all, you're already prepared for your child to get suspended, possibly move to another school, which means now you got to make other arrangements, or you got to teach them at home, because if they get expelled, they go to an alternative school. You can't just send them over. Well, I'm going to send them over to the school on the other side of the so you can kill somebody else's kid. Okay, so be careful what you training your children to do when they go to school. That's the first thing. And then if you're going to tell them to hit them back, just hit them back, and then now, or really it's about defending yourself and not letting them hit you.
and then saying, let me get to the teacher, I want to go to the principal's office and I want my parents called. You can have your own parents called up to the school. You don't have to have the school call your parents. There has to be some type of logical communication that we're giving our children so that they don't, number one, become a victim of a crime, and number two, they're not victimizing somebody else. And so parents, please think about what I'm saying and make a decision how you want to train your children, what information you want to give them, because they can either be the dead child or they could be the murderer. And no parent wants to be either one. The parent of either one. Just throwing that out there. Okay? It's not cut and dry as everybody thinks. Okay. So this guy got killed on Beatty's Ford Road the other day in front of, what was it, McDonald's or Burger King? I still don't know the facts of that story. He was killed by a police officer. Some say he was carrying a gun. Some say he wasn't carrying a gun. A lot of people, be careful how I say this, but agitators, every time a cop kills somebody, they're out there and they change the narrative. They can lie just because they want to make the cops the bad guys. Right. Where are they when we're killing each other? I still don't understand. Why aren't they picketing and out there and calling in the chief Putney when they killing each other? I don't understand that, but we're still waiting here. There's a few protesters out there, but the fact that there's not a whole lot, some people are questioning whether this guy had a gun or not. And then he went there because his girlfriend was there with another guy. She worked there and he thought she was messing with this guy or something. That's why he went there and started a big ruckus.
Well, they're also questioning the fact that if it's the right guy.
Right.
They saying
that he left and somebody else got killed.
He was the one that got killed. They're saying he actually was helping the girl, you know, so.
It's kind of hard, but was he carrying a gun? That's the point. It doesn't matter who started it, who had the gun. And if they had a gun, don't they have a picture of the gun? The gun didn't fly out of his hand and go into the street somewhere else. If he got shot with the gun in his hand, he had a gun, the gun should be next to his body somewhere, and there should be some proof of that. Why is it a question? I don't know. So there's still a lot to be found out with that. We'll see. Do we want to talk about Jussie Smollett?
Yes. You held out for a minute because you didn't know. How does that happen?
I don't want. All I have here is Jussie Smollett gets off, because I don't want to create an opinion here. I'll let you all tell me what y'all think, and then I'll tell you what I think.
I have an opinion.
I take the hand in the back. Forget about sexual orientation, it's irrelevant.
No, it's not.
That's the main part of the case. I heard that the police precinct, they started charging him for like a whole bunch of money afterwards.
Right. Yes. I'll tell you what I think about that. I'll tell you what they're doing. Anything else? Okay. So nobody wants to give their opinion.
You took out the sexual orientation.
Jussie Smollett. It's the craziest thing, because the legal pundits can't figure it out. They can't figure out how he got off. Right. So the state attorney's office dropped the charges, left Chicago Police Department looking like a bunch of fools, because number one, they didn't tell them that they were going to let him off. Number two, they worked out a deal. There's a lot of stuff that happened beforehand that created this. First of all, you had Michelle Obama's former spokesperson call the state attorney general's office to say, you know, talk to the family, like try to squash this thing. Okay, so there's politics that got infused into it. Then you had the situation where the police, which they should not be doing, they're supposed to give you the facts of what they say they are the case. But they went so far as to saying, oh, he did it, he shouldn't have done this. They disparaged him. So what they did was they really tainted the jury pool from Chicago, because he can't get a fair trial now. No way he's going to get a fair trial. This is national. So they had a problem. Then you have to wonder what happened with the brothers. The brothers could clear all of this up. The brothers said that they were hired by him So did they change their story and they don't have them as witnesses? So is that why they dropped the case? Nobody knows what happened. I'm waiting for Oprah to put them on TV and tell us what happened, because I don't get it. So you got all of these different moving parts that are not making sense. And so what happened, the thing got blown so far out of proportion that they had to drop the case. But the police department said, we have enough evidence. First of all, I'll say this. Nobody gives up their $10,000 as a gratuity, for being charged with a crime that they did not commit. He forfeited his bail, $10,000. He agreed to do so many hours of community service. Why do you do that if you're not the victim? If you're not guilty of anything that you did? It's just not making any sense. Right. I think Fox still doesn't want to touch it because they don't know. And keep in mind, the week before, he received a letter in the mail. Now that's Fed right there. When you put something in the mail, so if it was a false statement about the death threat that he got, they're looking into that. They're trying to figure out who produced that letter. Hopefully he's got no fingerprints on it or anything like that. But that case is still open. They haven't closed, the feds haven't closed their case. I don't know if they're gonna have some other issues with that. But this thing is really, really smelling real bad. So now the city of Chicago is saying, listen, we know you did it. You know you did it. So at least give us our money back for this investigation that you put us through for this false claim that you made. That's what the $130,000 is for. They want him to give up the money voluntarily, and they're saying they possibly will sue him for it, which if they sue him for it, now that's going to bring the case to trial, and now we're going to find out what happened, because all of this evidence is going to come out, not because they're charging him with a crime, but because in the civil side, they want to get their money back, and they have to prove that it was a fraudulent claim in the first place, and they want their money back. So they can get to him, they can't get him on the criminal side, but they can get him on the civil side and get to the same facts. Okay.
Sorry about Shabbat Shalom. It just shows, in my personal opinion, two major problems in this country. And that's why the Torah basically states, don't accept a bribe and how the gift blinds an eye. It shows that the rich and famous, the privileges that they may have sometimes because they have money to pay behind the scenes. And also it exposes just how unjust this criminal justice system is. For to have certain evidence and whatever deals him and the prosecutor may have made, how they're able to basically drop all the charges. So it just shows us over and over again that we cannot put our trust in the criminal justice system. And the Torah even tells us, I don't care how much cases you have. If you're guilty, you're guilty. They're not doing diligent inquiry, in my personal opinion.
Well, let me just say this, and a lot of people overlook this point. The criminal justice system in this country is rigged. We already know that. But not only is it rigged on the level of who gets charged and what have you, it's also about, when you talk about somebody's affluence, the money that they have, what happens is the money that you have, if you're affluent, pays for better lawyers. And better lawyers know how to circumvent the law. So it's not just the system itself and how the law is set up, it's the wisdom of the lawyers have a value. Because if you can't afford a lawyer and you get what they call a legal aid lawyer, a public defender, they got 1,000 cases, they're just trying to run through them, they're not going to defend you, they're not going to put their time and effort in it because they're not getting paid by you, they're just getting a salary. And so no matter how much work they do, they're going to make the same $80,000, $90,000 a year. And so it's not just about the criminal justice system, it's about the legal system and how certain people get better legal representation based on their money. So these smart lawyers know how to beat these guys down, and deep pockets, when you have a lot of money, you can fight them and it's not worth it to them. They don't want. So that's the value of the money. That's the value that the billionaires and the millionaires get, that have nothing to do with the law. It's basically about the representation that you can pay for, you can afford, that can get you off. And that's what got Jussie Smollett off too. It was the money that he could afford to fight them, as well as his
his recognition and the fact that they kind of muddied the waters when they made this such a big deal.
And my question to you though, in our Torah, the way things are set up, the way
no respect of persons and all of that. That's the way it's supposed to be. But even, listen, don't make me go there. Even in Israel, people in high places amongst our communities could get different treatment based on their prestige in a community. And like I said, I don't want to go there all the way, but we know that that's a possibility too. I ain't calling out no names. Anything else? Anybody else want to bring up a point? Can we move on? Oh, let me see what else I have here. I want to get into a portion. I don't have enough time. Okay, so Michael Avenatti. Michael Avenatti, there's something about him. He just seems grimy to me. I don't know. It's in the eyes. The eyes, they say, are the window to the soul. There's something about him. He's just, you know, they got him. I hate to say it, but they got him. He's making all of this big stink. But that, first of all, that case in California, they got him on 2 different indictments. The case in California is actually for embezzlement of client funds. I don't know, that's cut and dry. Either you took the money or you didn't. It's not your money. So I don't know how he's going to beat that one. The biggest one is the Nike extortion charge. They got him on tape making all of these statements. He says, oh, that was just aggressive negotiations. But it didn't sound like, if you're aggressively negotiating, you would be focused on the money for your client, not your fee. You know, get paid off. You know, So now, he just did an interview yesterday, and it was, all he's doing is spewing out all of the information he's got on Nike. So in other words, since y'all didn't pay me, I'm gonna tell the story so y'all can get in trouble. You know, and so that's the route he's going now. I think he's dead in the water. He made a lot of enemies, and now Donald Trump, of course, is gloating like crazy because, you know, he got his familiarity out of the Stormy Daniels scandal, and she dumped him. You know, so I don't know. He's hungry for money. I don't know what's going to happen with that. All right. I have a question about what y'all were talking about earlier. I wrote it down here so I wouldn't forget. Who's not washing their meat before they cook it? You were talking about washing the meat, and somebody said, yeah, some people take it out the package and just start cooking it. I want to know who you are. I need to make sure I know who's not washing their meat before they cook it. You know, we like to pass food around up in here. Folks, please wash your meat before you cook it, please. Please wash your meat. Huh?
Did you say the kosher idea? Are we not supposed to soak your meat?
Yeah, no, some people do. Some people, yeah, or at least, you know, I put meat. I like to put it in salt water to draw the blood out. But some people must be taking it out the package and putting it in the frying pan. I don't know. I'm just concerned. All right, I'm gonna let that go. The brother brought it up, and I said I gotta put that on my list. That we can't let that go. Okay, so now, folks, we're gonna get into some history. We're getting into 1 Samuel. They'll tell me if I'm out of control later. They'll tell me if there's something I'm saying that they think I went too far. I just think we need to know if everybody's washing their hands. Okay. What chapter are we up to? We're in 4 or 5 of 5 or 6 of Samuel, 1 Samuel. We're gonna finish this out. It's a long day. Y'all want to do some praising? You want to do that instead?
Yirmiyahu, the reader.
Well, he's gone. Maybe y'all can come up and do some songs or something. They don't want to. They get mad at me. They want me to do the history. We can do both.
This is the day of praise. We're going to do both? Yeah, give the brother a rest. All right, folks, this is what we're going to do. Hold on. I don't want to lose you. We're going to do one chapter, and then we're going to let y'all do some praise until the sun goes down. Or maybe two, we'll see. So where do we leave off? Does anyone know where we left off? Where's, I need, no, you. Eliab. Where did we leave off on Samuel? We left off at 7? We got that far?
They were kicking the Ark of the Covenant.
They were kicking the Ark of the Covenant around, yeah, around the Philistine lands.
I think we got back to when it got to Beit Shemesh. We might be at 9.
You think? Yeah, I see. Did they gaze on the Ark? Yeah, because it went back to Israel and they gazed on the Ark.
So we're on 8.
Yeah, they were happy. Came back to them.
Yeah, basically Samuel presides over them winning. That's in chapter 8. Like Evan Ha'ezer, all of that. Ebenezer.
7. Okay.
That's 7, and then 8 is when we start getting closer to Shaul.
I don't think we were that far.
I don't think we were far, so we must be at 8.
Yeah.
We're at 8. Okay, Eliab, can you tell us what happened in 7? You say Shabbat Shalom, let us see.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Eliab.
7, it was, I think the Philistines took the Ark of the Covenant, and then it was destroying their cities and giving them diseases, and then they decided to send it back to Israel, and then if they send it on a wagon with a bunch of stuff, and a cow went on it, driving it, and then if it went back to a calf, they knew it wasn't Yah, and if it went to Israel, it was Yah, and if it went to Israel,
Eliab is studying this stuff at home. I'm proud of you, Eliab. Okay, so we're going to pick it up in chapter 8. Okay, so now, guess what? Now Samuel's grown up. Samuel's grown up and he has a family of his own. And he has a decision to make because he's about to make the same mistake possibly that Eli made. Okay? So let's see what happens. Chapter 8 of 1 Samuel. It reads on this wise in the first verse.
We in the book of Sefer Shemuel, chapter 8, hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
And it came to pass when Shemuel was old that he made his sons judges over Israel. Now the name of the firstborn was Yoel, and the name of the second was Abiyahu. They were judges in Be'er Sheba. And his sons walked not in the ways, but turned aside after lucre.
Lucre, bribes.
Lucre took bribes and perverted justice.
Okay, so they were crooks just like Eli. Exactly, like Hophni and Pinchas. These guys are a bunch of crooks. Because what happens is, you hear about entitlement. These kids think, well, because my father got this, that, you know,
Riding on the
that's why you got to be careful when you're dealing with this priesthood, because everybody is not qualified to be a priest just because their father was a priest. Okay, so now he's got 2 sons who, for whatever reason, keep in mind that when a man is serving the Creator and serving Israel or any country that he lives in, and he has a family, there's a sacrifice that's going to get made. He only has the same 24 hours in a day that everyone else has. And if he's not home raising those children,
there's something going to be missing. Sometimes a mother can do the job of a father, but sometimes the hand of the mother on the takat of the children is not heavy enough. In other words, they need a makkah, and the mother's makkah is not good enough for them to understand and fear, you know, them and then the children. The takat is your bottom, okay? So, in this case, Samuel was a circuit judge. He went from town to town, city to city. He wasn't home. And so at some point, his children were doing his job at home, and they figured out that, you know, if I get extra money for this or pay me, you know, let's say, for instance, a guy commits a sin and he's got a lot of money. You say, how do priests get bribed? He's got a lot of money, but he doesn't have a lot of time to sit there and slay that animal. So he paid him off and they move him to the front of the line. Wow. Right or wrong? That's how it happens. And so they were taking advantage of their position and using it for profit. So they're not serving the Creator, they're serving themselves. Okay? And they're not serving the people. So that's what was going on here.
Yeah, my question is, you see this trend quite often. What is it about men in power and sometimes feel like they don't have to play by the rules?
Yeah, what is it?
Power for some people, responsibility is power. It's not responsibility. If they were doing their jobs, it would be a responsibility to do the job. But if they see it as a way to get over, then it's not about their responsibility, it's about the power that the responsibility gives them. And that becomes more important to them than the responsibility. And because they have that position, they take advantage for their own benefit. And it happens all the time. Okay? It happens all the time. It does. Everybody that has power doesn't abuse it. But it's very, very common. You have politicians, they're getting indicted left and right. Most of them get away with their stuff. Let's get that straight. But some of them are just so blatant with it that they get caught. And people, you know, for whatever reason. What was that?
Sometimes all it takes is a title.
Yeah, sometimes it's a title that make people, because again, the title is supposed to wield responsibility, but they interpret it as power. And they take advantage of it.
Torah. Okay. Verse 4. Then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together and came to Shemuel at Ramah, and they said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations.
I actually cannot blame them, even though it was a bad idea.
Right.
But they didn't realize they had another option. So what they're saying is, we don't want to follow them. We want to follow a righteous leader. But what he should have done was found a righteous priest out there somewhere. It wasn't his sons or something to lead the people, or however he was going to do it, because at this point they didn't have a king. It was all in the hand of Yah, because even though he took it, the Creator took this out as an offense against Israel, he gave us David after Saul. Okay. So for whatever reason, we did need a leader. But at the time, Samuel took it personal, because you're talking about his little trifling sons, and he took it personal because he felt that for the sake of the Creator, he thought it was a bad idea. Okay, but there was a lot of different things, dynamics going on, and I can see why the people didn't want his sons in there. Maybe they just shouldn't have asked for a king, because they really wanted a king in the form of what the other nations had, and that's not the kind of king that they should have been asking for. They should have asked for another leader or put it in another way. But what they did was looked at all of the kings around and about them, and they decided that that was the image that they wanted. They wanted to have what everybody else had. Okay, so it's wrong in a couple of different ways.
But the thing displeased Shemuel, and when they said, Give us a king to judge us, and Shemuel prayed unto the Creator. And the Most High said unto Shemuel, hearken unto the voice of the people and all that they say unto thee. For they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me.
So the Creator said,
I should not be king over them.
Exactly. And they should have been careful how they presented it. I just think they were ignorant. And I'm not giving them a pass, but the Creator took offense to it, and obviously he has a reason to do it. Because maybe it would have been better if they had said, Shemuel, pray to the Creator and ask him to give us a solution, an alternative to your sons. At least it would have given Shemuel an opportunity to seek the Creator in the matter, and who knows, he had communication with him. Y'all would have given him an answer. You know what I'm saying? But because they bypassed the Most High, either as being the leader or the one who could present or provide another leader, like he did Samuel, they went wrong with that. Okay?
And the Most High said unto Shemuel, they rejected me, according to all the works which they have done since the day that I brought them up out of Mizraim, even unto this day, and that they have forsaken me and served deities. So do they also unto thee. Now therefore hearken unto their voice. Howbeit, thou shalt earnestly forewarn them, and thou shalt declare to them the manner of the king that shall reign over them.
Okay, so the Creator is saying, give them what they want, but you need to let them know what they're getting themselves into, because so that they can't complain afterwards. In other words, they can probably back out of this if they want to. But if they're going to go in understanding what this means to be subjected to having a king subjected to them, under the subjection of a king, then they're going into it with open eyes, and they can't complain about what he's going to do.
And Shemuel told all the words of the Most High to the people that asked of him a king.
Because you know what? The thing is Slika, I'm sorry to interrupt you. The Creator knows what a king is going to do. A king is going to get high and mighty on his high horse, and he's going to become egotistical, and he's going to start doing things to abuse his power.
And he said, this will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them unto him for his chariots and to be his horsemen, and they shall run before his chariots. And he will appoint them unto him for captains of thousands and captains of 50s, and to plow his ground and to reap his harvest, and to make him his instruments of war and the instruments of his chariots. And he will take your daughters to be perfumers and to be cooks and to be bakers. And he will take your fields and your vineyards and your olive yards, even the best of them, and give them to his servants. He will take the tenth of your seed of your vineyards and give to his officers and to his servants. And he will take your men servants and your maid servants and your goodliest young men and your kamorim and put them to his work.
Okay, so what he's saying is pretty much is he's going to enslave you. He's going to enslave you, send you into servitude, take your money, take your kids, and he's going to, and they're going to say, okay, that's fine. So he's giving them the worst case scenario, thinking that maybe they'll change their mind, but they just don't want to be subjected to his sons, to Samuel's sons, first of all, and secondly, they don't want, they want to have it like the other nations. We got that bad. You know, we always like what the other folks are doing on the other side of the fence, and we're rejecting what we have. Okay? So that's what's going on here.
And he will take the tenth of your flocks, and ye shall be his servants. Ye shall cry out in the day because of your king, whom ye shall have chosen you. And the Most High will not answer you in that day. But the people refused to hearken unto the voice of Shemuel, and they said, nay, but there shall be a king over us.
You know, sometimes when you're talking to people, they already have you blocked out. They have their decision made. And I've talked to many of them. and it's like they don't hear what you're saying because they already have made their minds up. They have their decision. And they don't want you trying to muddy the waters with what they've already established that they want. And so they already got an answer for you before you finish. They're blocking out what you're saying because it's negative to them. When people don't want to hear what you have to say, they can pretty much, while you're talking, you're wah, 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 wah. Because I already got it all in my head. This is where I'm at.
Right.
And this is what Israel did. They just totally didn't hear it, and then they said, no, we still want a king. They didn't, I don't think they heard the part, we're going to take your vineyards and your flocks, and I don't think they heard it. Because how else are you going to survive now? Now you're totally dependent. And keep in mind, this is another thing that they wanted. They wanted to know, and they're coming off of the time of Judges, so they had no army. They had nothing, but with a king, they think that's protection.
More structure.
That's protection for them, and you know, they can fight against the Philistines better. They don't have a ragamuffin army. They're gonna have. He's gonna establish something, and you know, and he's their warrior. He's the person they're gonna look at to defend them against any and everything. They've forgotten the Creator does this. Right. That was Yah's job. That's right. But they've taken it upon themselves to think that they need a man to do it.
That we may also be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles.
He don't go by himself.
Yeah. And Shemuel heard all the words of the people, and he spoke them in the ears of the Creator. And the Most High said unto Shemuel, hearken unto their voice, make them a king.
Setting them up.
And Shemuel said unto the men of Israel, go ye every man into his city.
You know, I talked about this recently, how the Creator, when we get stubborn like that, even to our own hurt, he gives us what we want. Says, if that's what you want, I'll give it to you, and I'm going to make it as painful for you as possible. And that's what's happening. I'm not going to go any further because it's going to get real good and juicy. Huh? All right, I'm going to do one more chapter. Elliot, you're going to get me in trouble. Okay, so let's choose our king. We're going to go to chapter, what is it, 10? 9. Chapter 9, we're going to do chapter, how long is this chapter? No, I'm not doing this.
27 verses. It's about the same length.
No, this is supposed to be a day of praise. We're going to let y'all get some praise in it. I'm going to stop here. Oh, yeah? Y'all willing? They got me up here today because Cohen's Adult wasn't able to make it, and so, but I'm up next week, y'all willing? So we'll get some more in next week, okay? It's supposed to be a day of praise. We're going to let them get some in. And I know one thing. All of y'all was clapping for the praise. I better see y'all singing. Okay. All right? Better be singing, okay? Oh, the Shabbat school has something to do too. We got to do all of that.
Okay, let's give Saul another hand clap. Saul, you forgot to mention, we're trying to get the Yeladim, the young daughters and sons, to continue to read the history throughout the week. All right? So that.
We're doing chapter 9 next week, so start with chapter 9 and 10.
Exactly, and then we're going to ask you some questions about the previous chapter. So please, just keep that up, all right? Let's invite the Shabbat school up. Coach Shakira did a wonderful job with them today, so let's welcome the Shabbat school today. Hallelujah. You can be seated. Need a microphone? Here. Listen to the instructions of your teacher.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
So in class today, excuse me, my voice is kind of going.
Give it a mic.
Give it a mic.
In class today, we all learned a song, and they were really excited to share it with you all. So we'll be singing this song, but we'll be singing the song for you all. All right. So we're gonna start it off. You're gonna repeat after me, all right? Then we will sing it together. Let's say there? Okay. I am strong in the Lord and the power of his might.
I am strong in the Lord and the power of his might.
My yoke is easy and my burden is light.
My yoke is easy and my burden is light.
I shall face the world strong, free, and unafraid.
I I shall face the world, strong, free, and unafraid.
I shall endure.
I shall endure. I shall endure.
All right, y'all ready? Let's get funky with it. Get the clap. Get the clap. Together. Come on. Together. Yeah. All right. All right. Remember, we start on the clap, all right? Everybody together. Y'all can get funky with it. Remember the dance moves, okay? A 1, 2. A 1, 2, 3. I am strong in the Lord and the power of His might. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. I shall face the world, strong, free, and unafraid. I shall endure. I shall endure. I shall endure. Again, am strong in the Lord and the power of His might. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. I shall face the world, strong, free, and unafraid. I shall endure. I shall endure. I shall endure. Y'all getting shy. All throughout practice, we were dancing, we were singing. I gotta hear y'all. Y'all know my voice is going. All right? All right, one more time. All right, y'all ready? A 1, 2. A 1, 2, 3. Lord and the power of His might. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. I should face the world, strong, free, and unafraid. I shall endure. 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 I shall endure.
Down there had to put in his little 2 cents too, boy. I tell you. It's so about these children. You can't get mad at them. The Most High is touching their spirits with songs. Y'all there, just watch out from the next 5 to 10 years where he gonna be at. Look at him. He's just all over the place, boy. Shout out y'all for the Shabbat School, Shakira. Appreciate it. Give them another round of applause. We're gonna stand before y'all. We're gonna do some praises. I'm actually taking over for Roy Shua. He wanted me to do the praises. He said he wanted to rest his voice. You know he's the man. Roy Shua's the man. He said, I won't go on today. I shall not be moved. Can we get a, Rashadi, can you give me a Siddur with all of the songs, like Don't Around, and all of those chants? C'est quoi? All right. Let's start out. We want to welcome our brother and our miss, our new brother. How you doing, my brother? All right. Please tell us your name. Raymond Young? Oh, wow. Okay. We laughing because there's a lot of youngs in this building. So as they say down here, you might be kin to us. You never know, right? All right. Well, welcome to the Hebrew Family Charlotte, my brother. All right. Let's start out. Let's test our voices first, all right? We got to get into it. So we'll sing, What's My Name? We haven't sung that in a long time. Let's get our voices together. You know, when you're in music class, you know,
You just can't get right straight to the instruments. You know, you gotta test them out, and you gotta do your la 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 la, la la la, you know. So let's sing What's My Name on page 1 in our ensemble. Please help me sing this song. I've roamed this whole world over, been immersed in sin and shame. No man's feet I, message behind it, not been under. What's my name? I've been chained, whipped and beaten. Slavery's my only thing. Even my soul, the nation's plunder. What's my name? What's my name? Who could care for none doth stand with me? I alone have to bear my grief and misery. Comes a day my yacht is tired, way the heathens use his name, and he'll tear my bonds asunder, and you'll hear when I proclaim, and you'll hear when I proclaim, Israel, Israel, Israel is Hallelujah. Israel is our name, brothers and sisters. So we're moving on. We sang this morning, but let's sing it again. That's kind of our improv, our introduction to our praise segment. Y'all know Ha'azinali, right? The young daughter's been slacking on that little part that they sing, so we hope that y'all get it. You know what I'm talking about. He is my king. We haven't heard that in a while, all right? Come on. Oh, even Muzah's part of it too? All right. All right, let's go. Ha'azinali. Ha'azinali. Ani aveka ani omer. Olevaneka ka'asher ani margish me'ayem Rosele mogo, shembo akali weko mishpati asi home ho pero shalom. The hymn. Vino te lekem, vino te maya, mima akira, boko hazman, lele kaola, kore haaret, Ugo shienu shemo Yahovah. What's his name? Yahovah. We will bow down before you, Yehovah. All right, all the women, come on. One more time, come on, ladies, come on, stronger. All right, come on, brothers, what do we say? One more time, brother. All right, everybody, come on, what do we say? Come on, Joman, come on. Again. Repeat after me, come on. One more time. Are we ready? I don't know how. Come on, Joman. Let's get this drum and settle. Come on. It's the same beat from the last time. Bring it up, come on. Eli, when I go God's with me, and I shall not fear. Say, I know, I know, I'm with you, Come on, let's say it together. Shema Yisrael. Jehovah Hinu. Jehovah Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod. Malchuto le'olam va'ed. Come on. Hear, O Israel. Jah is one. Hear, O Israel. Our God is one. Come on now. Hear, O Israel. Our God is one. Our God is one. Our God is one. I said, hear, O Israel. Hear, O Israel. Our God is one. Our God is one. I said, hear, O Israel. Our God is one. I said, hear, O Israel. Our God is one. Bring it up. Hear, O Israel. Our God is one. All right, drummers, I need to hear your voice. Hear, O Israel. Our God is one. I said it, hear, O Israel. Our God is one. I said, hear, O Israel. Our God is one. I said, hear, O Israel. Our God is one. Come on, Hebrew. Israel, Yahuwah, Elohim. Come on, drumming. Blessed be the name of God. As we end out this evening of glory to the Holy One of Israel, we give God a hand. We give each other a hand. To God be the glory. Hallelujah. This time we're going to go into our final prayer of the day. We say the sacrifices and meal offerings are not found in our hands. Praying that y'all would even accept even these words. As we start a new week, praying that the Most High will be with us in the week to come, that He will be with us in our travels, that He would get us to our destinations in safety, and that He will protect us from all danger and harm, seen and unseen. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Sacrifices and meal offerings are not found in our hands. Father of mercies, at Thy Lord standeth firm. Accept the words of our lips and the murmurings of our hearts. Receive our prayers in mercy and in favor. Grant us joy and gladness. Comfort Thy people. The Lord answers thee in the day of trouble. The name of the power of Israel set thee up on high. Draw us not away, Yah, with the wicked, for our delight is in Thy word. Let Thy word heal us and cause us to prosper. Cause Thy wisdom to blanket Israel. Let the visions of the righteous be our lot. Yea, even the dreams of Thy redeemed, our good fortune. Draw us with cords of love, and let our borders be true. Into Thy hand I commit my spirit. All praises unto Thee, O Yah. We have thought of Thy loving kindness. We rejoice in the house of Yah. Come behold the works of God and rejoice in the same. For He has rescued His people Israel. He has called forth the dispersed of Akhot. He causes righteousness to stand where calamity was. For such is our power forever and ever. He will be our God henceforth eternally.
Sing his praise aloud. Hallelujah. Shema. Shema. Yisrael. Hallelujah.
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 Oh, yeah. To thee we pray. Send forth thy angels to guide us on our way. Lift up thy hand for thy people to know, understanding, with wisdom to show. We are thy people, and thou art Yah alone. Onward we march, as in days of old. Onward we march, His glory will show. For our hearts we turn to thy Lord. Glory to Yah, and onward we go. Onward we march, as in days of old. Onward we march, His glory will show. For our hearts we turn to thy Lord. Glory to Yah, and onward we go. Oh Yah, to thee we pray. Send forth thine angel to guide us on our way. Lift up thy hands for thy people to know, understanding, with wisdom to show. We are thy people, and thou art Yah alone.
Hine, Baraku et Yahuwah, Kol Abdei Yahweh Ha'omdim Babeit Yahuwah Balelot, Sebu Yadechem Kodesh, Ubaraku et Yahuwah, Yivarecha Yahuwah Mitzion, Ose Shemaim Va'aretz. Modim Manaknu Lefanecha, Yahuwah Elohim, Habore, Fore HaShemayim Va'aretz, Fore Ko Bazar Bam, Yotze Ha'or, Ose HaKol, Abba Yah, we thank you for bringing us to yet another Shabbat day, allowing us to praise thy high and holy name, to be able to gather together in love and in unity, to be able to increase our understanding in thy Torah. Abba Yah, we thank you. We thank you for all of your many blessings, Yehovah Eloheinu, food, clothing, and shelter, giving us protection in our travels, allowing us, Abba Yah, to even come unto this precious place, to be able to praise thy high and holy name. Abba Yah, we thank you for bringing us to this season, as the Abib approaches, and as we prepare our Rukot, Abba Yah, for the Pesach season. May you give us the strength, Abba Yah, and the insight to look within ourselves and to remove not only the leaven from our homes, but the leavens from within our minds and within our hearts, so that we may be pure vessels in thy sight, Yehovah Eloheinu. Babakusha Abba Yah. Your people cry out unto you. We sing out unto you, Yehovah Eloheinu. We need thy help, Abba Yah. Without you, we cannot go on. Continue to put the breath of life within our nostrils. Continually give us the vision that we must do, establishing thy righteousness in this earth, Abba Yah. Be with thy people, near and far. Gather us together once again. Babakusha, Yehovah Eloheinu. May you be with us in this week to come. And as we will be observing the bringing in of the new Shana, Babakusha, may you be with us, Abba Yah. We thank you for bringing us yet to another glorious time. Even every day, every precious moment, Abba Yah, is glorious before thee. Babakusha, Abba Yah, help the people that are in the hospitals, help people that are recovering. Even those, Abba Yah, that are recovering from not just illness, Abba Yah, but even those that are recovering from setbacks that they feel they have made. Give them the strength, Abba Yah, to persevere, to be better before thee, Abba Yah. We are the tools in thy hands. We are the arrows in thy quiver, Abba Yah. Use us for thy name's sake, so that thy will may be established now and forevermore. Kol kavod eleka, leolam va'ed. Yehovah Melech, Yehovah Malach, Yehovah Yimloch, leolam va'ed. Hallelujah. 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 Baruch Yehovah Ba'okwer, Baruch Yehovah Bezoraim, Baruch Yehovah Be'erev, Baruch Yehovah B'layla, Baruch Yehovah Yom Yom, U'Baruch Yehovah Tamim, Yehovah Eloheinu Babakusha, Lisloach lanu lekol devarim ra'im she'asinu lefanecha Yom Yom, V'liyot imanu kol halayla hazeh, Lema'an Shimcha Yehovah. Elohei Avraham, Yitzchak veYisrael, Elohei Avotenu veEli, Lishmoa bekolina, im tereseotcha, Lema'an Shemcha Yehovah. Hallelujah. 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 Yochai. 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 Selah. O Shema Yisrael, Yahovah Eloheinu, Yahovah Eloheinu, Yahovah Eloheinu, Yahovah Eloheinu, Eloheinu, Yahovah Yahovah Eloheinu, Yahovah Eloheinu, Yahovah Eloheinu, Shema Yisrael, Yahovah Eloheinu, Eloheinu, Yahovah Echad. Sole olam, sole olam, sole olam, sole olam,
Hallelujah. We look now unto the Holy One of Israel, asking that he would even bestow upon us a blessing for his great name's sake. I do not have the power to bless. I do not have the power to curse. Only Yah can do both, but I pray that Yah will bestow upon us a great blessing blessing of peace, a blessing of prosperity, a blessing of health, a blessing of peace in our homes, a blessing of protection with all of the crazy things that are going on in this world today. Please, Yah, bestow upon us the blessings of our progenitors, even Abraham, Yitzchak, and Israel. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Yivareka Yehovah wa yishmarecha. Ya'ir Yehovah panayo alecha vechunecha. Yisa Yehovah panayo alecha wa yasem lecha shalom. Yehovah will bless you and keep you. Yehovah will cause his face to shine upon you and will be gracious unto you. Yehovah will lift up his countenance upon you and will give you peace. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Okay, please be seated. Miss Shade, Miss Shade, can you translate what we just sang with Bapasha? Bapasha, just for the newcomer in our midst, Mr. Young, just want to let you know we apologize if we haven't been translating the words and the songs that I saw you clapping and rocking to the beat, you know. But sometimes we have to, go back to what we're saying. So we've sang the 150th Psalm, which says simply,